get started and be super respectful of all of your time. Thank you so much for those of you who are here wearing a mask, being socially distanced. I really, really appreciate every single one of you. For those of you signing in, I'm going to take my time so you have time, so no rush, okay? Hi everyone, my name is Lee Perry and I'm the senior aide to Commissioner Wilson. She had a family obligation today, but I am here. I am a climate activist. I am an environmental advocate, very well known in the community. I've run grassroots organizations all over the world. And one of the biggest priorities to Commissioner Wilson, day one, when she and I first met, was water. Water quantity, water quality, people's quality of life that live near water. Everybody needs to drink water. It's a vital resource that is on the #1 top of the priority list of the commissioner. Now, not being from the political world, being more in the public sector, this has been a very big learning curve for me because, I'm still learning how everything works. But by receiving emails from every single one of you at the district1@ocfl.net email, I have been able to work hand in hand with many of the board members for the Big Sand Lake Advisory Board and constituents just like you on getting you answers to some of your most pressing concerns. And this is why this meeting is going on tonight, because I have been personally attending a lot of the advisory board meetings and hearing a lot of feedback from people who have much deeper concerns about flooding, about water quality, about encroachment of your homes from the water, what happens in case of an emergency, what's going on with the I-4 expansion project. And so we have a whole agenda with speakers. The staff and the team worked so hard on this, and we're just giving them the platform to be able to answer your questions directly. But it doesn't end here. I really want to encourage every single one of you to please be, communicate with our office. We want it to be an open book. We want everyone, thank you so much. We want everyone to be able to have in my ear and the commissioner's ear whenever you need to. Her calendar fills up a lot more quickly than mine, so I'm here for you. And ecosystems, water quality, your homes, your boat docks, these are all things that are very important to me as well because it's your quality of life. We want happy residents. You are our boss. And so you can call me anytime. I'll make sure I have a stack of cards in the back by Mr. John Jennings. Hi, Mr. John Jennings. Hey. I have a stack of cards with my contact information. You can take a picture of it so we can save on paper. And please come up and speak to me after this meeting with any concerns that might not have been covered. I'm trying to do IT right now. So for those of you who asked about the Facebook Live, be patient with me because I'm not the most techie person, but we're recording this on 2 different devices. So no matter what, we will get it out to the public by tomorrow on YouTube. So I was just handed this note about housekeeping reminders. Please put your cell phones on silent. Hold any questions and comments until the end of the presentation. Question and comment cards are available to be completed and returned at the end of the presentations. Line up at the podium to ask questions. You don't really see, podium's up there, okay. And 2 to 3 minute speaking time is encouraged. Now, for those of you, not everybody's comfortable with sharing in front of other people. So if you want to come up and get my card at the end and connect with me, I would be more than happy to work hand in hand with you on whatever your case may be, okay? So I am super excited to have the entire team from the Environmental Protection Division here. Public Works is here. We have some consultants here as well as the Florida Department of Transportation that they'll be presenting today. And mind you, I keep bringing this up because it's so important. Please contact us individually if you have any questions. We love to communicate with you all. Commissioner Wilson does Facebook Live events every Thursday at 4 o'clock. It's at Nicole Wilson D1 on Facebook. And that's your opportunity to ask questions live on her Facebook as well when I'm interviewing her about weekly updates. We want to set a precedence for the most transparency we can possibly have within the district. And we want to be as accessible as possible. And so, I can't beat that drum loud enough for you all to understand that we're here for you. Okay. Awesome. All right, so the agenda. So we're going to go over, these are all basically agenda points that I had brought to EPD based on the feedback and the concerns that we've heard from you, the residents. If you want to already get started on a follow-up meeting to this and you see something that you want represented on the next agenda, I would love help organizing the next meeting and getting people to come out. So definitely stay in touch. So obviously opening remarks, we're going to talk about boat dock permitting requirements. I've heard a lot of people say, I wish my house was flooded more than my boat dock because I can't insure my boat dock. That there's a lot of concerns about boat docks being flooded. And I want to find answers. I want to find if there's any opportunities out there to help people who have these concerns and get the answers about how that application process is done. We're going to talk about that today and keep that conversation going moving forward. Current and historic lake levels. This is something that we will be working with our consultants to talk about. Lowering the Big Sand Lake outfall, the I-4 expansion project, and any future drawdown projects, Big Sand Lake water quality. For those of you that might have water quality stories, I would love to see pictures of what it looked like 50 years ago and see how it compares. And let's really make a point to make the advisory board meetings a focus of water quality. And let's really try to create a strategy on getting these water quantity issues past us so that we can focus on remediation. Big Sand Lake lead impairments, there's some big plans in the works that EPD has been championing to remediate the water and soil of lead contaminations and development regulations, and then we'll save the end for questions and comments. All righty. Yay. And let's have a beautiful ecosystem and beautiful quality of life for everyone that gets to enjoy and breathe in the beautiful lake air. We want it to be a pleasant experience, and I know some of you have called me in tears about the water levels and your fears of what that could mean for your home. And that's why this meeting was put together in the first place, is that we want to hear you and we want to let you know that things are happening behind the scenes to help. So let's go ahead and invite EPD and give a round of applause to EPD.
Thank you, Lee.
Of course.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Hall. Thank you. You set those phones. It's done for me. Thank you, Liz. I'm Tim Hall. I'm with Orange County EPD Natural Resource Management, and I'm the administrator over the Natural Resources section. And prior to that, I was team leader in the Natural Resources Permitting section, where we reviewed boat dock applications and issued boat dock permits, along with several other types of natural resource permits. But tonight I'm going to cover just boat docks. Of course, if you have any other questions about our environmental permits, I'll be glad to answer those at the end of the meeting. But the boat dock regulatory authority is found in Orange County Code, Chapter 15, Article 9, in the Construction of Dock Ordinance, which you can find on Muni Code, looking under Orange County, and then Chapter 15, Article 9. And the purpose of that ordinance is to regulate dock construction in order to minimize adverse impacts of such activities upon natural resources. We want to make sure that people aren't constructing docks that are having a negative permanent effect on our lakes. So that whole article, Article 9, is full of regulations that are applied in a manner that are sensitive to a few things: riparian rights and other property rights of waterfront owners, the rights of the public to the traditional use of the water, and in such a way that the navigation of water bodies is not reasonably impeded. And we have a few criteria. If a clicker will let me go back to it. which it might not. Well, the clicker doesn't want to let me go in reverse, but fundamentally the criteria include regulations on the size of the terminal platform that you're allowed to build, which are based on how much shoreline you own. Also side setback criteria, again, based on the amount of shoreline you own. You could either have a 25 or a 10-foot setback that is allowed. There are restrictions on how high a dock can be built, 12 feet above the deck elevation. And the last thing that I wanted to cover about the criteria is that there is a 1 foot minimum deck level above the normal high elevation, so the normal water level of Big Sand Lake, as documented by Public Works in the lake fact sheet. We have a 1 foot minimum above that. Lee has reported to us that several people might have that a little bit confused in that they believe that the dock is underwater because they were required to build the dock at a certain elevation, and then water levels rose and now the dock is underwater, but there's actually no maximum deck level required. A contractor could research the historic water levels and build the deck as high as necessary to avoid any flood elevation. There's no height restriction on how high the dock can be built, only that it has to be 1 foot above a normal height. And that's to, in theory, prevent people from running into a flooded dock under a normal high water level condition. This next slide just talks about our couple processes. The first one is the waiver process, and that only applies to 2 different scenarios, either a side setback reduction or a terminal platform increase. So side setbacks, if you want to reduce the setback, you can provide us with a letter of no objection from that affected neighbor on that side. And then the EPO, that's our manager of the Environmental Protection Division, they can administratively approve the waiver. Otherwise, if we don't get that letter, it goes to the Environmental Protection Commission for a hearing, and then they make a recommendation to the board of county commissioners. The second scenario in the waiver request process is a terminal platform exceedance. So a dock can be 10 times the shoreline length for the first 75 feet of shoreline, and then 5 times for each additional linear foot, not to exceed a total maximum of 1,000 square feet. And on those, there is no low-no process. Those waivers are presented to the EPC and ultimately to the BCC in all cases. And then the next major process that we have in the code is a variance process. And that's for any deviation from code other than the terminal platform size exceedance and the side setback reduction that I already talked about. So the variants have 4 very specific criteria in order to receive an approval or approval with conditions. And those are that, number 1, the request can't be contrary to the public interest. 2, owing to special conditions, compliance with the provisions herein would impose an unnecessary hardship on the permit applicant. So you have to demonstrate that compliance with the code would impose a hardship on you. 3rd, the hardship can't be self-imposed. And 4, the granting of the variance would not be contrary to the intent and purpose of Article 9. All variance requests go to the EPC first for a recommendation, and then on to the BCC, typically on consent agenda. However, there are some special EPO approvals where they can skip that process for either ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, or sometimes where if the variance is going to actually promote more ecological benefit than would compliance with the code, then in those cases, the EPO can also approve. Well, no, it doesn't want to go forward either. Let me try, I'm going to try moving positions. There we go. So this is a floating dock recommendation letter. So since 2016, when was about the time that EPD started to receive an increased volume of people complaining about their docks being underwater. And so we developed this template letter in our system so that every time a dock application came into our door for the past 5 years, for Big Sand Lake specifically, we have sent this letter to the applicant and copied their dock contractor, explaining that Big Sand Lake experiences a wide fluctuation in water levels, anywhere from 10 feet below normal high to 10 feet above normal high. And therefore, we recommend you consider building a floating dock in your dock design. So for the past 5 years, people have got that letter. So if you or your friends or neighbor or anyone is interested in either the status of a boat dock permit, or you're interested in one that was issued particularly anytime since 2011 when we built our database, you can Google this and go online to what's called the Orange County Fast Track Permit Portal, and you can search by Big Sand Lake, you can search by street address, you can search by owner name, and you can look up any boat dock permit that you might be interested in finding out about, even pending applications that are still being reviewed. And then the last little section I'm going to cover about boat docks is we're currently working on updating the ordinance. Article 9 was adopted in 1988, and it was last revised in 2004. And so there's a lot of antiquated language, and we've learned since 2004, of course, through citizens and contractors reporting difficulties in the code that they have asked us to address. We've actually tried to bring the ordinance forward to the board before, but sometimes it becomes political and we weren't able to bring it forward. But we have an effort that we're very far along with right now. The goals in that update include, of course, maintaining environmental protections. We don't want to decrease protection of water bodies. Decreasing the amount of time it takes to review and obtain a permit. Increase the maximum allowed dock dimensions required by certain portions of the code. Eliminate the waiver process, but we're actually going to make it more difficult to obtain a variance. And just about those 2 bullet points, we're making it easier and eliminating the waiver process if you want to increase your dock over what the current code says, up to a maximum of 1,500 square feet. So that process up to 1,500 square feet, and also up to 15 times your linear shoreline length is going to get much easier. And what we've found, what we've built into the draft is that what most people are asking for is going to be captured in the streamline process. And only those oddballs that we get that are really large would need to go through any process, and they will go through the variance and be run through the variance criteria, which are going to be a little bit more difficult to get. And then lastly, we want to decrease the frequency of after the fact permit requests. And part of the way we're doing that is we're going to have in addition to the permit application fee, there will be a $500 administrative penalty for building a dock without a permit. So the timeline for that effort, we already held stakeholder meetings, 2 of them on September 15th, one in the early afternoon and one in the evening. And we got some great feedback from some of the contractors that came out. Next month and in November, we'll brief the mayor and the commissioners on the ordinance. Next year, January, February, brief the advisory boards, including the Environmental Protection Commission, the Development Advisory Board, and the Land Planning Agency. In March, April, we're looking at a VCC work session before the board. And then finally, hopefully May or sooner next year is the adoption hearing for the ordinance. If you're interested to read it, of course, this presentation can be made available to you, and there's a link there to the draft ordinance on the county calendar. And then also, if you have any comments about it, whether you read that ordinance or not, if you just want to submit a comment for our consideration, you can email it to wetlandpermitting@ocfl.net. And that wraps up the dock presentation. And we're going to go into lake levels.
Woohoo!
I'm going to walk with you here. There we go. All right, so I'm Tom Nasser as the Geosynthetic Consultants. I put the picture up there to show that I have all my teeth. I'm a civil engineer, actually been working for Orange County as a consultant for my entire career, helping them with their stormwater management issues. I also was the engineer of record for the Big Sand Lake Watershed Management Plan, and also the Big Sand Lake Outfall Improvement Project, which I'm going to talk about more tonight. So I have quite a bit of experience working within the Big Sand Lake watershed. I gotta be careful not to hit the button too many times. There seems to be a delay. So I'm going to start off with talking about the historical water elevations in the lake. One of the first things that stands out to me when I look at this graph is how the lake levels have fluctuated quite a bit over the history that goes all the way back to the 50s. And so this tells me that the lake essentially behaves as a landlocked lake. So when you get a very heavy rainfall year, heavier than average, which average in Florida, Central Florida, it's about 50 inches a year. When you get more rainfall than average, then the water levels go up. When you get less rainfall than average, then the water level tends to go down. So if you look at back in the 50s, 1959 and 1960, we had 63.77 inches and 68.74 inches, which is well above average. And that was the main contributor to the all-time peak back here in 1960, which is 99.46, which, by the way, did occur before any development had happened in the watershed. Now, after this peak, you see the elevations just steadily kind of decline until you get to the all-time low in 1981 of 78.39. And that was essentially because of drought conditions that were occurring. Now, after that low, you see the water level kind of steadily increases as you get more average years throughout the period from the early 80s until about the year 2000. Hopefully it'll go to the next slide here. I might have to.
What is that number? 79, you said 79, as it comes down.
Which number are you talking about?
At the bottom of the chart, yeah, right down there. So
78.39.
what is that? The depth of the lake?
That is the elevation of the lake, surface water elevation.
The surface water elevation, 78. And then, thank you.
So what are you saying there? You're saying that in just so I understand. So when it was at 100 feet, right? That how much rain was recorded that year? Like I think it doesn't matter how much rain. It doesn't matter about the height of the lake. It's the ratio between the amount of rain and how much that puts in the lake, surely, right?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, let's just say you get 2 inches of rain puts 1 inch of water in the lake, right? So that's just traditionally how it was. But now, you get 1 inch of rain, it puts 6 inches of water. That is the issue. I mean, if you go to the dock bar, correct?
Okay, excuse me, that we can hold questions until the end, please. And discussion. We let him finish the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think we got to understand what
Okay,
the
we
charts
can
are.
get to those questions. Please let him continue. He will continue to explain.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions. It's actually not my intent to cover that specific subject as far as additional runoff into the lake due to development, but I think that may be discussed by elders this evening. All right.
I just wanted to understand how
Right.
many feet from the low to the high. I didn't understand the numbers on it.
From the low to the high.
From the low, you had 78, and at the high, you had 95. I guess that's
Okay, so his all-time historical high is 99, and the all-time historical low is 78.
so that's a 21-foot difference.
Right.
Okay.
And so I just say that to illustrate that the lake behaves as a landlocked system,
I understand.
with those very large fluctuations. Okay, so I've switched the chart, the time range of the chart. So we're now zoomed into the last 20 years. So back in 2002, 2002 to 2005, we had abnormally high rainfall, and that's what is the main cause of the peaks right here. In 2002, we had 74 inches, 2003, 61, 2004, 61, and 2005, 56, well above average. One thing I also want to point out is although these peaks were quite high, probably higher than most people would like, they were still well below the minimum finished floor elevation of 101.5. And none of the peak stages in the last 20 years has been close to anyone's minimum, that minimum finished floor elevation. Also in 2003, the county was able to work with FDP and get a drain well installed at elevation 91.7. And then in 2015, they were able to get another drain well installed also at elevation 91.7. And what the drain wells do is they actually take water into a casing and then send it down into the aquifer. It's a 12-inch diameter pipe that goes down, and it actually provides some volume recovery for the lake to help reduce those higher stages that you see in the lake. Now even after the drain wells were installed, we see from the fluctuations and the fluctuations of the lake above those drain well elevations that the lake still continues to behave as a landlocked system despite the flow that the drain wells are providing. And so in 2016, which is right about here where you see that orange line, the county proactively reached out to DOT because they heard about the DOT's I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project and saw that as an opportunity to potentially reconstruct the high-level outfall that is on the lake at elevation 95.34. So that's what the remainder of my presentation, I'm going to talk about the outfall improvements. It will go. There he goes. Okay, so this is the existing outfall on Big Sand Lake. Big Sand Lake's on the west side of the map, or the left side of the map over here. And then there's a series of culverts and ditches that go under Turkey Lake Road, under I-4, connect to the Central Florida Parkway, storm sewer system, and then drain to the Valencia Water Control District ditch over here. This system currently, if the lake levels are under 95.34 feet, this system essentially just provides drainage for Interstate 4 and Turkey Lake Road. If Big Sand Lake reaches 95.34 feet, then it starts to overtop this high point in the system and drain east through the system and out towards the Valencia Water Control District. So this is the existing condition, existing outfall of the lake. This is just a zoomed in view of that outfall. So there's Turkey Lake Road, here's I-4. This is the profile of the pipes and the ditches. All right, so what is the proposed system? The proposed system would replace the pipes and ditches from Big Sand Lake to Central Florida Parkway with a storm sewer, enclosed storm sewer network, storm sewer system. That system would continue to receive runoff from Turkey Lake Road and I-4 as the current system does. But the big benefit for Big Sand Lake is the high point in this system would be 92.83 feet, which is 2.51 feet lower than the current outfall. And so this is just a zoomed in view of that profile, of the proposed profile versus the existing one. So you have a 2.5 foot lower system. All right, so going back to the historical map, I'm going to go to the 20-year one. So because of the county's proactive efforts with the DOT and coordination with the DOT, this system, and I should note that it has already been designed and permitted through the St. Johns River Water Management District and the Valencia Water Control District. And so the next step is just construction, and it will be constructed as part of the DOT's Beyond the Ultimate project when that is constructed. That is for DOT to divulge that information later. I believe so. Yes.
What is it about?
All right, so if you'll let me finish, I'm sure they'll discuss it.
I've been waiting a number of years for this. Is it next week? Is it 2022 or 2023?
We're looking at 2022, sir.
There you go.
2022. I'm from DOT.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so 2022. All right, so another question you may have is, okay, so how much additional flow will this, or benefit or flow will this outfall provide? So just for comparison purposes, the drain wells, when they're flowing at their maximum rate, they can handle about 1,300 gallons per minute going down the well, leaving the lake, going down the well. When the proposed outfall, when it's flowing full, and I want to emphasize, when it's flowing full, will provide 10,000 gallons per minute of additional outflow, which is the equivalent of about seven times the existing drain wells, or the equivalent of adding about 14 more drain wells to the lake. And with that, I think I'll pass the baton over to the DOT.
Is it this one?
This is the laser pointer, and this is the next.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh,
I'm sorry?
oh, they've got a switch.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, hello everyone. My name is Su Hao, and I'm from I'm sorry? Louder. Okay, I'm trying to be as loud as I can. I don't have a loud voice. My name is Su Hao, and I'm from FDOT. I'm here to give you an update on I-4 Beyond the Ultimate and the projects that we have coming up on going to construction in this area in the near future. I can pull it from here. Or... Oh, there we go. Okay. So why are we reconstructing I-4? Well, the original I-4 was built back in the 1960s, and since then there has been a lot of development. Today it's home to more than 2.5 million people. And since then, vehicle and safety standards have also been substantially changed. So that's why we've had to rebuild I-4 several times throughout its life. And we have the I-4 Ultimate project that's going on in construction right now. So the goals of the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project are to increase safety, increase mobility and ease congestion, increase connectivity among Central Florida communities, and support the region's economy and lifestyle long into the future. So this is a map that shows you the limits of the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project. In the center there, we have I-4 Ultimate in gray. That's been going on in construction for the past several years, and hopefully we're looking to wrap that up towards the end of this year. So the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project is basically an extension of that towards the south or the west. Oh, I'm gonna go back. Is there a way to go back? At least we can get to go back earlier. Okay. So anyway, I'll continue. So for the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project, we are extending that from the I-4 Ultimate limits. And what we are doing is we're looking to prioritize critical areas that have the highest amount of needs. So with that in mind, we are looking to construct some projects, critical projects to address the areas that are needed the most. So here are some projects that we have going to construction or in construction right now. The first one is the I-4 at Champions Gate project down in Osceola County. As you might know, that area gets backed up a lot. So that just went into construction this past summer. It'll be converting the existing interchange into a diverging diamond interchange, which I'll get to in a moment. The other two projects we have are the I-4 at Darrell Carter Parkway project and the I-4 at Sand Lake Road projects. So both of these projects will be converting the existing interchange or overpass into a diverging diamond, and they will be going to construction in the spring and summer of 2022. So for the Sand Lake project, as mentioned previously, we are converting that into a diverging diamond. A diverging diamond interchange has several advantages over a traditional type of interchange. The most important of which is that it removes left turns across oncoming traffic. And what that'll do is that'll improve safety, and that'll also cut down on the number of traffic signal phases, which lessens the amount of time that vehicles need to spend waiting at a traffic signal. I'll get to more of in that in a second. Another key feature of the Sand Lake Road project is the removal of this left turn from westbound Sand Lake Road to Turkey Lake Road. Now, when I was driving here today, I was pretty backed up when I was getting off the exit from westbound I-4 to Sand Lake Road. And I'm sure a lot of people here have witnessed the same thing. That exit gets a lot of traffic, and the reason for that is that the vehicle is trying to turn left onto Turkey Lake Road. That turn gets backed up a lot. So what we are doing is that we are putting in, this will work for me. Is there a way to control this? Okay. So what we're doing is putting in this loop ramp. This loop ramp, what it does is it creates a direct access for vehicles traveling on westbound Sand Lake Road to get to Turkey Lake Road. And it also gives a direct access from I-4 to Turkey Lake Road. What that does is it takes a lot of vehicles who would typically use the Sand Lake Road exit and gives them their own exit onto Turkey Lake Road. So that creates, that diverts a lot of traffic away from this exit, and hopefully that'll ease congestion on the I-4 main line as well. Oh, okay. Yeah. Would this work better? Or do you want to click? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Quick question, how do you merge those two traffic flows? The I-4 and people that take.
Oh, great question. There will be very good signage out there, and we will set up the lanes so that the lanes coming off of I-4 will have its own separate lane as it approaches the loop ramp. Okay, so as mentioned previously, we are looking to prioritize critical areas utilizing the funding that may become available. And as part of that, the I-4 Ultimate Express lanes are expected to open by early 2022. So if funding becomes available, we want to look at possibly extending the express lanes south towards Disney. And we were looking at various options like managed lanes, truck-only lanes, HOV lanes, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So the I-4 Darrell Carter Parkway project is going to convert the existing overpass into a diverging diamond interchange. 3 of the legs of the interchange will be built with this project under construction in 2022, with the 4th leg being constructed at a later time when funding becomes available. As part of this project, as Mr. Amstad mentioned, we are also going to be building the Big Sand Lake outfall on behalf of Orange County. The county did design the project, so the FDOT, all we're doing is taking over the construction of that project and doing it for the Orange County. Next slide, please. So another project we have is the Champions Gate interchange project. So that one, we're basically much of the same. We're converting the existing interchange into a diverging diamond. Osceola County is the one that designed this project. We are overseeing its construction. Keep going. So as part of this project, we are also going to be widening the ramps to the interchange to help create more storage for the vehicles and help ease traffic flow. Okay, just keep going. And another project that we have is a more minor project. We're going to be adding eastbound and westbound auxiliary lanes on I-4 from Champions Gate to State Road 429. So much of the same. It's going to be just adding an additional lane on I-4 to help with the traffic flow down there. We're also going to be milling and resurfacing I-4 from the Polk Osceola County line to State Road 417. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk more about diverging diamond interchanges. So as mentioned previously, diverging diamond interchanges, the main advantage is that it eliminates left turns across oncoming traffic. So how does it do that? It does that by shifting traffic to the left side of the road as it goes through the interchange. And that would allow vehicles looking to get onto the interstate to make a left turn directly without having to go through a traffic signal. So that reduces the number of traffic signal phases, and it improves congestion for the whole interchange. Next slide, please. So here's a slide that shows a number of conflict points. So a conflict point is basically when a vehicle crosses paths with another vehicle. So that can happen when it makes a left turn or merges with another vehicle. So on the left, you see a traditional diamond interchange. The traditional diamond interchange, as you can see, has 18 possible conflict points. A diverging diamond interchange on the right side only has 8 conflict points. So that's why a divergent diamond interchange is much more efficient than a traditional diamond interchange. Right. So this shows how a divergent diamond interchange works. I'll go through them one by one. Next slide, please. So to go through an interchange, you basically just follow the path of the lane. So you go, on the left side of the screen, there will be a traffic signal there. And then when the signal turns green, then you just follow the lane through the interchange, and it'll cross you over to the left side of the road. And then you keep going, and then there will be another traffic signal before it crosses back over to the right side of the road. Next slide, please. So then how do you take a left to get onto the interstate? So that's where the divergent diamond interchange advantage comes in. So so first you go straight through the traffic signal, and then the lane will pass you to the left side of the road. And then before crossing to the end of the interchange, you simply take a left onto the on-ramp. Next slide, please. If you're trying to take a left onto the side street coming off the interchange, you just stay in the left side of the lane, and then when the traffic is free and it allows, you just take a left turn. And then that will cross you back to the right side of the road. We have a website, i4beyond.com, where you can find the latest information, our latest projects, and a bunch of other really useful resources. And I encourage you to check that out. And with that, that's my presentation. Thank you.
I work for Orange County Environmental Protection Division, and I'll be discussing some of the drawdown projects that have been done in the past and one that we're currently working on. So there have been drawdowns on the lake. One was done in 2003, and then 2 pumping events were done in 2005. And this shows some information about when the pumps were turned off and on, or on and off, the dates, lake elevation, and duration, and the change in the stage. The photo down on the bottom is what the outfall currently looks like now. From June 2002 to August 2003, Big Sand Lake water level rose 8.03 feet. On August 9th, 2003, the berm between Little Sand Lake and Big Sand Lake washed out, and the elevation in Little Sand Lake was 5.74 feet higher than on Big Sand Lake. In addition to that, an outfall pipe under the FDOT jurisdiction was clogged, and based on these factors, the Water Management District issued an order on August 21st, 2003 for the drawdown, and the pumping was lowered from 96.80 to 94.61 feet. In 2005, high water levels due to hurricanes in 2004 impacted the completion of drain wells that Tom mentioned before. And the Water Management District issued a permit in February 2005. The water was lowered from 96.06 feet to 94 feet. And that facilitated in the completion of the drain wells. The first one in 2005 at an elevation of 91.73 feet. And then the next one was done 10 years later in 2015, 91.7 feet. On September 30th, 2020, the Big Sand Lake Advisory Board approved up to $500,000 of MSTU funds to pump Big Sand Lake. The current scope, we had Geosyntec perform an analysis, and based on their design, 2 pumps with a combined discharge of 22.2 cubic feet per second would pump 7 days per week, 24 hours per day to a maximum lake elevation of 92.83. And the conditions would be monitored daily. However, the current status is that the owner of the property where we would need to stage the pumps and the tanks, the fuel tanks, we're awaiting approval from them for a right of entry. We started that process in February of 2021. The right of entry was sent to the owner in May, and they replied in August, on August 31st, 2021. We sent them just a standard 1-page right of entry document, and they returned several pages back in revisions. So our county attorney is working with their attorney to get that approved, and we will not be able to start this process without having the property owner's authorization to be on their property. So this is the location of the outfall as you've seen before. And then these are some of the details. Over in this area is where the intake would be for, and then these hoses here lead to some pumps and tanks. And the hoses outfall here where there's some riprap. This part of the channel would be blocked off, and that's where it would discharge. And then this is just zoom in on the road here. We'd have to do a curb cutout so that the trucks could enter in and out to refuel the tanks. There are some shut-off conditions, so if any of these are met, the pumps would have to be turned off. The Valencia Water Control District, if they report adverse impacts such as flooding or notable erosion, if Osceola County requests that the pumping activity cease due to occurring or imminent flooding in Shingle Creek, water levels at the Campbell Monitoring Station, which is a station in Shingle Creek, if it reaches or exceeds 59 feet. And if there's a forecasted 24-hour rainfall that exceeds 5 inches in the area of the pump site at Big Sand Lake, that would be another trigger to turn off. If the water levels are below the elevation of 92.83, which is also the same elevation of that outfall pipe, the proposed outfall pipe, if water levels in Shingle Creek are at an elevation of 77.61 at a structure 102 in the C1 canal, and if there are any downstream increases in turbidity beyond the acceptable 29 NTU above background. So this is an overview map. Here's the outfall. The Valencia Water Control structure is out over here. This is International Drive. So all this would be monitored on a daily basis. Here is the staff gauge. That's where we would measure the elevation of the lake on that day. This is the upstream turbidity, and then downstream here is where we'd measure the turbidity. And now I'll move on to Big Sand Lake water quality. So this graph shows total nitrogen As you probably know, the two nutrients that we track for biological activity are total nitrogen and total phosphorus. If you look at the darker color, so EPD goes out on a quarterly basis to collect surface water samples, and this is done at no cost to the MSTU. It's just part of our monitoring schedule. The light colored points are the north lobe, and the darker colored points are the south lobe. And basically the point of this graph is to show that over time from 2002 to the present, 2021, the levels of nitrogen have been stable in both lobes. And this dotted line here shows a trend line. This is the graph for total phosphorus. The lighter colored is the north lobe, and the darker colored is the south lobe. The concentrations have decreased in the north lobe and then stable in the south lobe. Here's the north lobe here, and then the bottom one here is the south lobe. The next graph shows chlorophyll A. Now, chlorophyll A is the primary pigment in green algae, and when the pigment is extracted and analyzed, it gives you a comprehensive picture of how much algae is in the lake. And the chlorophyll A shows a decrease in the north lobe and shows to be stable in the south lobe. This is a graph of the trophic state index. The trophic state index is a classification that's used to rate water bodies. Over time, the TSA in the north lobe has decreased and it has been stable in the south. TSI of 59 is considered a good water quality. And I know it's difficult to see, but these numbers here show 26. So that's a lot lower than the 59. And the components that make up the calculation for TSI are chlorophyll, total phosphorus, total nitrogen, and clarity. And I also want to mention that none of these graphs show a deterioration in water quality. I often hear or see emails about the water quality on Big Sand Lake is poor or deteriorating, but none of these graphs show any evidence to support those statements. So all these graphs, the data is available on the Water Atlas. It's available to anyone. You can just Google Orange County Water Atlas, and you can find all this information. But we haven't done a comprehensive hydrologic and nutrient budget for the lake. A proposal was submitted to the advisory board, and these are some of the components that would be included in a hydrologic and nutrient study. The first one is water quality data assessment, and that would just take the historical information from the Water Atlas and evaluate to see where you are. Contributing area delineations would be the subbasins would be delineated, which make up the total larger watershed. And doing that, you could actually find out if you have certain areas that are contributing more nutrients, for example, and projects could be targeted for that area to address any concerns you may have from one particular spot. Surface water quality monitoring or surface water monitoring program. Right now, there's a quarterly sampling that's done, and this would supplement that and give monthly surface water samples over the course of a year. Stormwater inflow monitoring program. Areas would be identified where stormwater inflows come into the lake, and that data would be analyzed and would be collected and analyzed. The groundwater seepage monitoring program. Seepage meters would be placed throughout the lake to quantify the quality of the groundwater that comes into those particular areas, and that also could assist in your hydrologic budget as well. Sediment assessment program would be installing cores to figure out what is at the lake bottom, and you could potentially find out if your nutrients are coming in from the lake itself and not external. And all this information would be used to develop the hydrologic and nutrient budget. And the main point would be to prepare a management plan and to find lake-specific projects that you can do to improve the water quality. And the quality is good, but you don't want to wait till it actually does start to deteriorate. Okay, and now I will pass it to Mitch.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mitch Katz. I'm the Water Sciences section. And Water Sciences section, the section that does like the assessments of the watersheds and looks at water quality, runs some data analytics, and then cleans up the water, remediates, addresses sources of ongoing pollution within that watershed. So let's see here. Yep. Over here. Oh, there we go. All right, just what you want to see. Another graph, right? All right, what you're looking at here is this is time. And then this is concentration. You can see it spans from 0 to 8 parts per million. All these orange dots here, these are lead concentrations in the surface water. And that lead concentration is dependent on the amount of carbonate that's also in that water column. And this squiggly line here is kind of like the water quality standard dependent on the concentration of carbonate. In other words, alkalinity. And you can see that there's, several exceedances of this standard right here. There's also some samples that were below that standard as well. So what Orange County is going to do is we're going to look at a site here, and this is the southern lobe. Historically, from 1970 to the mid-90s or so, there was a skeet and trap range here, and shooters would line up in these kiosks and fire out across the lake at the skeet and at the traps. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection came in, and with the county, they did a cleanup in the 80s, the early 90s. The site was issued a source rehabilitation completion order saying that all of the land sources were cleaned up of lead. However, what we're seeing out here is we're seeing some concentrations, like I showed you on the previous graph, of lead that kind of exceeds standards. So as Nydia mentioned, the county goes out there on a quarterly basis and grabs samples, kind of mid-lake in this area right here, and reports that up to DEP. DEP looked at the data and said, look, if we think you got a problem with lead out there, we want you to address it. So what Water Sciences, EPD Water Sciences is going to do is through our consultants, we're going to go ahead and take some samples of water on a monthly basis and of muck, unconsolidated sediments. And muck is kind of like, lawn clippings and leaves that get blown off the surface down into the storm drains and onto the lake. And it's that kind of gelatinous kind of layer of unconsolidated sediment that is kind of, can be a repository for nutrients that are released. And we're going to look and see if there's some lead in there. We're also going to try to get our arms around the lead should we find it. In other words, before we can start treating and removing sources, we have to know the vertical extent of the source and the horizontal extent of the source. So that's what this assessment's about. Of course, we'll report out. That report will contain recommendations for future work and ways to address the lead contamination. And we're looking at about a 24-month project window. So in a couple of years, we should be getting this report coming out. And of course, these reports we posted to the Orange County Water Atlas, which you can Google and see. All right, and that's it from Water Sciences.